The human man sat in the corner of the great hall. Around him, dozens of alien warriors laughed and shouted, their voices deep and heavy like rolling thunder. The air smelled of iron and smoke, and banners of many alien clans hung from the tall walls. The hall was alive with pride, power and challenge, but for the human, it was a strange place, and every eye turned toward him. He was not weak, but compared to the tall aliens, he looked small. The aliens were twice his height, with thick arms, sharp armor, and eyes that glowed faintly in the dim firelight. They were known as the Vayari, a warrior race that respected only size and strength. To them, muscles meant honor, and height meant power, and in their eyes, the human looked like nothing more than a child holding the weapon of a soldier. At the center of the hall, one voice rose above the others. It was her voice, sharp but calm, proud but smooth. The alien woman stepped forward, taller than the rest. Her armor black with silver edges. Her movements were steady and full of confidence. She looked at the human with a smile that was not kind, but not cruel either. It was the smile of someone who enjoyed the game before the fight. You, she said, pointing at him with one long clawed finger, you are the human they talk about, the one who dares to walk among my people. Her words carried across the hall, and the other aliens laughed louder. The sound of their laughter shook the walls like drums. The human stood calm and quiet, though inside his chest his heart beat fast. He knew this was no simple meeting, this was a test that would decide how humans would be seen in this place. The alien woman tilted her head, her sharp teeth flashing as she spoke again. You look too small for my species, she said. The laughter grew stronger, like a wave breaking against the rocks. Some aliens even struck the tables with their fists. Repeating her words, too small, they mocked. The human's hands tightened at his sides, but his face stayed calm. He knew one wrong word would make him look weak, and one wrong step would make him look foolish. In his mind, he thought of Earth. On Earth, size was never the only answer. Ants carried more than their weight. Wolves hunted in packs, and small armies in history had defeated larger ones with clever minds. Humans had survived not because they were the biggest, but because they were the most adaptive. He reminded himself that strength was not always in muscles. Strength was also in patience, in strategy, and in the courage to stand when no one believed in you. The alien woman stepped closer, her shadow falling over him. Her voice dropped lower, almost like a whisper but sharp as steel. Tell me, human, do you think you are strong enough to face me, or will you admit now that you are nothing but a visitor in a world too large for you? Her eyes glowed with challenge, and the crowd waited for his answer. The fire crackled behind him, and every breath in the room seemed to stop. This was the moment, the first step. If he refused, humans would forever be seen as weak. If he accepted, he risked humiliation or worse. But in that silence, he remembered something simple, something his people always carried. A belief that even the smallest spark could burn the largest shadow. He lifted his head and met her glowing eyes. His voice was steady, not loud, but strong enough to cut through the hall. Maybe I am small to you, he said, but small does not mean weak. The crowd went quiet. The laughter froze. The alien woman's smile grew wider, her sharp teeth shining in the firelight. For a moment her eyes narrowed, and then she laughed. Not in mockery this time, but in interest. Her laugh was deep and powerful, and it filled the hall with a strange new energy. Good, she said, then prove it. The crowd roared again. But this time it was not only laughter. It was excitement, hunger for a test, for a duel, for a story that would be told again and again. The human stood tall. Though his body looked small beside the giant warriors, he had taken the first step, and now the path before him was filled with danger. But deep inside he felt no fear, only determination. For he knew this was not only about himself, it was about what it meant to be human in a galaxy that did not yet understand. And so, in that great hall of warriors, the hook of his story was set. The alien woman had challenged the human man. The question was no longer if he was too small. The question now was if the galaxy was ready to learn what a human truly was. The hall trembled with the sound of voices. The crowd of alien warriors slammed their fists against tables, their heavy boots against the stone floor. They demanded a duel, a contest, a trial of strength. The human man stood in the middle, surrounded by bodies twice his size, their glowing eyes fixed on him. The alien woman, tall and fierce, raised her hand, and the noise fell into silence. She looked down at him, her smile sharp and proud. You spoke bravely, human, she said. her voice echoing in the high hall. But words are only air, and air cannot hold a blade, air cannot break bone, air cannot win honor. Her eyes gleamed, her voice like thunder wrapped in silk. Will you prove yourself in combat, or will you leave this place in shame? Every ear turned toward him. Every alien waited. If he refused, they would laugh forever, and humans would be marked as cowards if he accepted. He faced a fight against a being bred for war. His heart raced, but his face stayed calm. He thought again of Earth, of human history, of battles where the weak had outsmarted the strong. In that moment, he understood that this was not only about strength. It was about showing them that humanity was more than flesh, more than height, more than muscle. He lifted his head and said in a steady voice, "I accept." The hall exploded in cheers and howls, the sound shaking the banners on the walls. The alien woman nodded once, her eyes sharp as blades. "Good," she said. "Then tomorrow at the first light, you will stand against me in the arena." She turned and walked away, her armor ringing like metal bells. The other warriors followed her, still laughing, still shouting, but now with a hunger for what was to come. The human was left standing, his hands loose at his sides, his thoughts heavy but clear. He had taken the path of danger, but there was no turning back. The challenge was set, the duel could not be undone. That night he found no rest. He walked the quiet corridors of the alien fortress, the torches burning low. The shadows long, he thought of her words, of her strength, of her size. He thought of his own body, smaller, lighter, weaker in pure force, but he also thought of the human gift, the gift that had carried his people across oceans, across worlds, across the stars. The gift of strategy, of adaptability, of courage in the face of fear. In a small chamber, he sat and remembered old battles from human history. David against Goliath. Small armies against empires, pilots against fleets. He remembered how humans had always found a way. He whispered to himself, "They think size wins every fight, but size without thought is nothing." He closed his eyes and breathed deep. Tomorrow he would not only fight for himself, he would fight for humanity. When the first light came, the arena was already full. Hundreds of alien warriors filled the seats, their chants shaking the air like thunder. The ground of the arena was hard and red, stained by battles of the past. Tall stone pillars stood around the edges and fire pits burned with blue flames. At the far gate, the alien woman entered, her armor shining, her presence commanding every eye. She raised her arms and the crowd roared her name. At the other gate, the human stepped forward. No armor, only simple clothes, no great weapon, only a short blade. The crowd laughed at the sight, their voices sharp. Too small, they shouted again. Too weak. But he did not look at them. He kept his eyes on her. The woman smiled, slow and confident. "This is your last chance, human," she said, her voice carrying across the arena. "Kneel now, and I will let you walk away. Stand, and you will be broken before my people." The human lifted his chin. He spoke with a calm voice, strong enough for all to hear. "I will stand." The crowd roared again, but this time it was mixed with excitement. They loved defiance even when they expected defeat. The woman's eyes narrowed, and she drew her blade, longer than his arm. Sharp as firelight, the duel was set. The challenge real. The drums began to beat, slow at first, then faster, until the ground itself seemed to move. The human tightened his grip on his short blade, his heart steady now. He knew this was not only her test of him, it was his test of her and of her people. Would they learn to see strength beyond size, or would they cling to their pride? As the first strike came, fast and heavy, the crowd held its breath. The challenge had begun, and in that instant, the human man knew, win or lose, the galaxy would never forget what was about to happen. The human stood in the arena, the dust rising around his feet. The alien woman's blade had already cut through the air once, missing him by only inches. The sound of steel slicing wind echoed in his ears. The crowd roared with excitement, their voices heavy with hunger for battle. But even as he moved, even as he dodged, his mind was already preparing. She was fast, far faster than he expected. Her steps were long, her reach wide, and her strength obvious with every swing. If he met her blade head-on, his weapon would break, his bones would shatter. He could not fight her in the way she expected. He had to fight her the way humans always had, by turning weakness into strength. The second strike came, and he rolled aside, his short blade flashing in the light. He did not attack yet, he only tested, watched and waited. The crowd laughed. thinking he was afraid, but his eyes were sharp. He studied her movements, the rhythm of her attacks, the weight in her steps. Every fighter, no matter how strong, had a pattern, and every pattern could be broken. The alien woman laughed as she swung again. "You run well, human," she said, her voice loud above the noise. "Perhaps your legs are your greatest weapon." The crowd laughed with her, their chants filling the air, but the human did not answer. He saved his breath, he saved his mind, because words would not win him this fight. Only timing would. The duel slowed for a moment, and the alien woman lowered her blade. Her eyes narrowed as if she was searching for the fear in his face. But she did not find it. Instead, she saw something else, something she had not expected. She saw calculation, patience, and silence. And that silence made her uneasy, though she did not show it. The human's heart beat steady now. He thought of the old lessons of Earth, of hunters tracking prey. The hunters never chased blindly. They studied, they waited. They watched for the single mistake, the single opening. That was how humans had survived the wilds. That was how they had crossed mountains and oceans. And that was how he would survive this duel. The alien woman charged again, her armor heavy but her stride unstoppable. The ground shook under her steps. The firelight flashed across her blade. She struck hard, but again the human twisted aside. The blade hit stone, sparks flying into the air. The crowd cheered, not for him, but for her strength. Yet in that moment, the human saw it. A tiny weakness, almost invisible when she struck with full force. Her guard lowered for the briefest second. It was not much, but it was something, and something was all he needed. He stepped back, breathing slowly. The dust of the arena clung to his face, sweat rolled down his back, but his eyes stayed fixed on her. He whispered to himself, so low no one could hear. Wait for it, wait for the moment. The alien woman lifted her blade high. Her pride unshaken, she called to the crowd. "See how small he is, see how he fears me?" The crowd shouted her name. The ground itself seemed to tremble with their voices. But behind her words she was growing frustrated. She was used to quick victories, to opponents who broke within minutes. But this human did not break, he endured. And endurance was another kind of weapon. The human's mind sharpened with every second. He thought of the old stories of soldiers who fought against impossible odds. He thought of the sailors who braved storms, of the farmers who bent the land to their will. He thought of humanity as a whole, a species that had never been the biggest, never been the strongest, but always the ones who adapted, always the ones who found a way. This duel was more than his survival. It was the voice of his entire kind. If he failed, humanity would remain small in the eyes of the galaxy. If he succeeded, he would open a door no one could close. The drums beat again, louder and faster. The alien woman's blade rose for another strike, her muscles tense, her eyes sharp. The human gripped his short weapon, his body ready, his mind clearer than it had ever been. The crowd leaned forward, their glowing eyes watching, waiting. The duel had only begun, but the true fight was coming. And in that fight, size would no longer matter. What would matter was timing, courage, and the mind of a human. The alien woman swung, and the air cracked with the power of her strike. The human moved, faster this time. Sharper, closer. For the first time, his blade touched hers. The sound of steel meeting steel filled the arena. The crowd gasped. The laughter broke for a moment. The human smiled, only slightly. His eyes burning with focus, he had found his opening. And now the true preparation was over. The real battle was about to begin. The arena shook with the roar of the crowd. The alien woman's blade pressed hard against the human's small weapon, sparks flying as steel ground against steel. She pushed with raw power, her arms like iron, her muscles straining with confidence. But the human did not break. His feet slid across the red dust. His arms trembling, yet his eyes steady. He had survived the first clash. And that alone silenced many voices in the crowd. She pulled back her blade and swung again. A wide strike meant to crush him. The human ducked low, the blade slicing the air above his head. He rolled to the side and rose to his feet, striking quick. A slash aimed not at her chest but at her armor's edge. The strike left a shallow mark, a scratch that barely touched her. But it was enough to make her eyes narrow. The crowd gasped, for the first time realizing the human was not simply running. The alien woman growled, a deep sound that echoed across the arena. "You dare touch me," she said, her voice sharp with anger. The human did not answer, his silence louder than any insult. He moved light, fast, always keeping distance, his short blade flashing when the moment was right. He struck at her sides, her arms, her legs, Never for a killing blow, always testing. Always learning, her fury grew. And with fury came mistakes. She swung harder, faster, the ground breaking under her steps. But her strikes began to miss, her rhythm broken, her guard thin. The human watched, patient, his mind sharp. He knew she was stronger, but strength without focus was only noise. The crowd's cheers changed. Some still shouted her name, but others began to murmur. They saw the human was not falling. They saw the fight was no longer one-sided. Every time he dodged, every time his blade struck a spark against her armor, their voices shifted. They came to see her crush him. But now they were seeing something else. They were seeing possibility. The alien woman leapt forward, bringing her blade down in a strike that could split stone. The human stepped aside at the last breath. Her weapon slamming into the ground, dust exploded into the air. Firelight flickered across the arena. And in that moment her guard was open. Wide, unprotected, the human's blade moved, quick as lightning, striking across her shoulder. The cut was shallow but real, a red line against her pale skin. The crowd roared, some in shock, some in awe. For the first time, alien blood had been drawn by human hands. The alien woman staggered back a step, her glowing eyes burning with rage. She laughed then, a strange laugh, filled with both anger and respect. "You are bold, human," she said, her voice low. "But boldness cannot save you." She raised her blade high again, her body shining with sweat, her strength still far greater than his. But the human spirit did not falter. He breathed deep, his grip steady, his eyes never leaving hers. The fight turned sharper, faster. Steel clashed against steel, the sound ringing through the air. The human ducked, spun, and struck in small bursts, while the alien woman pressed forward with endless power. The arena became a storm of dust, fire, and steel. The crowd was no longer laughing, no longer mocking. They leaned forward, their glowing eyes wide. They were watching something new, something they had never seen. A human refusing to bow, a human standing tall against one of their strongest. But the human felt his strength slipping. His arms ached, his breath came sharp, his body smaller and weaker than hers. He knew he could not last forever. He needed the final strike, the perfect moment, and so he waited, though every second burned his lungs. The alien woman roared, swinging with all her might. Her blade came down in a wide arc, her pride demanding a final blow. The human's eyes narrowed, his body moved before thought. He dropped low, sliding under the strike. Her blade smashed into the stone with such force the ground cracked. And there it was, her guard broken, her chest open, her strength wasted in one heavy swing. The human rose from the dust, his short blade flashing forward. He could strike deep, he could end the duel. He could prove himself with a single cut. The crowd held its breath, waiting for blood, but the human stopped, his blade resting only inches from her heart. He looked into her eyes, steady, calm, without hate, and then he stepped back. Lowering his weapon, the arena went silent. The silence heavy. Never before had mercy been shown in such a fight. The alien woman stared at him, her chest heaving, her blade heavy in her hands for a long moment. She said nothing, then slowly, she lowered her weapon, her glowing eyes softening. The crowd did not know what to do, to cheer or to rage. They only stared. As history changed before their eyes, the human had not won with size.
He had not won with strength, he had won with patience.
With courage, with mercy, and in that moment, the duel was no longer about him and her. It was about something greater. It was about what humanity truly was. The arena was frozen in silence. The human man stood with his blade lowered, his chest rising and falling with every breath. The alien woman's heart beat like thunder in her chest, her weapon still heavy in her hands around them. The crowd of warriors did not cheer, did not laugh, did not mock. They only stared, their glowing eyes wide with shock. Mercy was not a word in their culture among the Vayari. Every duel ended in victory or defeat, blood or death. To stop at the edge of victory was something they had never seen. For them, mercy was weakness, and weakness was shame. Yet here stood a human, small in body but vast in spirit, showing strength by not striking. The alien woman breathed heavy, her pride wounded not by his blade, but by his choice. Her voice was low, rough with anger and confusion. "You had me, human," she said. "You could have ended this." Her words carried across the arena like broken stone. The human looked at her calmly, his eyes steady, his voice simple. "I did not come here to kill," he said. "I came here to be seen." The crowd stirred. A wave of whispers spreading through the warriors. Some shouted that he was weak, others that he was a fool, but some for the first time said nothing. They were thinking, wondering, questioning what they had just witnessed. The alien woman's grip on her weapon tightened. Her pride fighting against her mind all her life. She had believed that strength was shown by crushing the weak, but now in front of her was someone who had defeated her without finishing her. Someone who had proven that mercy itself could be a weapon. And in her heart a strange feeling grew, one she had never felt before. It was not hatred, not shame, but respect. "You are strange, human," she said at last, her voice softer. "You fight without fear, you bleed without complaint. And when you stand above your enemy, you do not strike." Her glowing eyes searched his, looking for the secret he carried. "Why?" she asked. "Why spare me when all of my people wished for your fall?" The human raised his blade and slowly placed it back in its sheath. He stood tall, though the dust clung to his clothes, though his body ached with every breath. His answer was steady. "Because if I kill you, I prove nothing," he said. "If I spare you, I prove that humans are more than you believe." The crowd erupted again, but now their voices were split. Some shouted in anger, demanding blood, demanding a true ending. Others shouted in awe, their chants carrying his name instead of hers. The Hall of Warriors had never been so divided, and the woman felt that divide inside her own chest. She lowered her blade at last. Her pride bending but not breaking, she stepped back, her tall shadow still towering over him. Her voice was low, almost respectful now. "Maybe small does not mean weak," she said. The words struck the crowd like a storm. For her to say such a thing was unthinkable. Yet she had said it, and no one could deny the truth in her voice. The human nodded once, his face calm. He had not sought her praise, but her words mattered, because in them was the beginning of something greater than a duel. It was the beginning of a shift, a change in how her people might see his kind. But twists never end so simple, as the crowd murmured, as voices argued. Another figure stepped forward from the higher seats, a very elder, old yet strong, his eyes brighter than the fire itself. His voice cut through the arena like a blade. "This duel is not finished," he declared. The crowd fell silent again, all eyes turning to him. "You may have shown mercy, human, but mercy is not victory in our law." The alien woman turned sharply, her jaw tightening. "Elder, he bested me," she said. "I felt his blade, I saw his choice, he could have ended me." But the elder shook his head. "In our way, victory is clear and final," he said. "Mercy clouds it, mercy weakens it. If this human wishes to stand equal with us, then he must face more than a single duel." The crowd shouted again, some cheering the elder's words, others protesting. The human man stood silent, his mind calm even as danger grew again. He had known this would not be simple, that one duel would not change a world. And now the truth was clear. This fight was only the beginning. The alien woman looked at him once more, her eyes softer than before. She spoke low so only he could hear. "You may have won my respect," she said, "but you have awakened the interest of those who will not show the same mercy you did." The human nodded. His jaw set. He did not fear what came next, because he knew that every test, every challenge, every twist was a chance for humanity to prove itself. And as the crowd roared, as the elder's voice echoed with new demands, the human stood ready, not just for another duel, but for a war of beliefs, a war where size would never matter as much as spirit. And in that war, he knew humanity had always been ready. The arena still shook with voices. Some warriors cried for blood, others cried for honor, and others sat silent, unsure of what they had witnessed. The human man stood calm in the middle, his small frame surrounded by giants. The alien woman beside him lowered her blade, her face torn between anger, respect, and confusion, and above them, the elder's voice carried like a storm. "This duel is not victory," the elder said, his glowing eyes fixed on the human. "You showed skill, but skill is not enough. You showed mercy, but mercy is weakness. You must prove yourself again, or leave this world in shame." The crowd cheered his words, yet many still looked at the human with new eyes. They had seen something they could not forget. A man too small for their standards standing against one of their strongest. And though the elder spoke of weakness, the memory of that duel whispered of strength. The human drew a deep breath. His body was tired, his arms heavy, his blade still warm in his hand. But his spirit stood tall, his voice carried steady. "I came here not to break your laws, but to show you another way," he said. You believe mercy is weakness, but I tell you mercy is strength. It is the power to win without losing your soul. The crowd stirred. The words strange to their ears, yet powerful. The elder frowned. His sharp teeth bared. You speak like a dreamer. Human, but we are warriors. Dreams do not win battles. His hand rose as if to declare another trial, another test, but before he could, the alien woman stepped forward. Her voice rang across the arena, loud and proud. Elder, I fought him, I felt his strength. And I tell you now he is no dreamer, the crowd gasped. For no warrior of her rank had ever spoken against the elder in public. She raised her blade, not in challenge, but in respect. This human spared me when he could have slain me. And in that choice I see no weakness, she said. I see a kind of courage our people have forgotten. Silence fell over the arena. Heavy and sharp, the elder's eyes narrowed. But even he could not dismiss her words. For she was no weakling, no child, she was one of their finest. And her voice carried weight. The human looked at her, their eyes meeting for a brief moment. And in that moment he knew he had won more than a duel. He had won an ally. The elder turned his gaze back to the crowd. Very well, he said, his voice low but commanding. Let the people decide, let them judge if this human stands among us or crawls beneath us. The crowd erupted again. Their voices split, their chants colliding in the air. Some shouted for his exile, some shouted for his honor. Some shouted simply in confusion. And in that storm of voices, a new truth began to take root. For the first time, humans were not invisible. For the first time, a single man had forced an entire species to think, and thought was more dangerous than any blade. The human bowed his head slightly, his voice calm. I did not come here to conquer you. I did not come here to shame you. I came here to stand, he said. And today, I have stood, the alien woman stepped closer, towering over him yet speaking with a softer tone. You are still small, human, she said, but today, small has become something greater than we imagined. Her words carried across the arena, and many who heard them felt their pride shift. They began to question what they had believed for generations, and questions are the first cracks in the walls of tradition. The elder raised his hand once more, but this time his voice was weary. Perhaps you are not weak, he admitted, though bitterness filled his tone. But do not think your path is finished. Human, you have taken your first step, but many eyes now watch you, some with respect, others with hate. He turned and left the arena, his shadow long, his authority shaken. The crowd began to disperse, some still shouting, some still silent, but the human remained standing, his blade at his side, his body weary but unbroken. The alien woman stood beside him, her armor scratched, her pride shifted. You may have changed nothing today, she said quietly. Or you may have changed everything. The human looked at her and gave a small nod. Change always begins with one step, he said, and today, I took mine. As the fires in the arena burned low, as the stars above began to shine, the human walked away. Not as a victor, not as a conqueror, but as a spark that could one day set a galaxy aflame with new ideas. Ideas that small did not mean weak, that mercy did not mean cowardice. Ideas that humanity was ready to share with all who dared to listen. And though danger waited, though challenges lay ahead, the human knew this was only the beginning. Because stories do not end in a single duel. Stories grow, twist and rise like flames. And the story of humanity in the stars had only just begun. The night after the duel was heavy with whispers. The great halls of the Vayari fortress glowed with fire, yet the air was colder than ever. The human man walked alone through the stone corridors, his steps quiet, his mind alive with thought. He had survived, he had been seen, but he knew victory was only the beginning. Respect was a fragile flame, and many still wished to crush it. Outside, the alien city pulsed with life. Warriors trained in the yards, their roars shaking the walls, their blades striking like thunder. Others sat in dark corners, speaking in hushed voices, their glowing eyes filled with suspicion. Some now admired the human, others despised him. And in that division lay danger. The alien woman found him near the training grounds. Her tall figure cast a long shadow over him, her armor still scratched from the duel. She stood with arms crossed, her eyes studying him in silence. At last she spoke, her voice calm but edged with warning. You stood today, human, but do you understand what you have done? The human looked up at her, his face calm though tired. I showed them another way, he said simply. She shook her head, her dark hair shifting against her armor. No, she replied. You challenged more than me, more than tradition. You challenged power itself. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. The elder will not forgive this. Others will not forget. And the next trial may not come in the arena. But in the shadows, the human listened. His eyes sharp, he knew her words carried truth. The duel had won him respect from some, but it had also painted a mark upon his back. A mark that invited both honor and assassination. Yet he did not flinch, his voice steady. Then I will face them as I faced you, he said. The alien woman studied him again, her eyes narrowing as if searching for weakness. But instead of weakness, she saw something she could not name. Not strength of body, not force of arms, but a fire that endured even against storms. For the first time, she wondered if her people had measured strength wrongly for centuries. Later in the halls of council, the elder gathered his closest. His voice thundered, his words sharp as stone. This human cannot be allowed to rise, he said. He has cracked the walls of our pride, and if the cracks spread, our foundation will fall. The other elders murmured, some agreeing, some uneasy. One asked, but if we strike him, will that not prove his words true? Will that not show we fear him? The elder's eyes burned. Fear or not, we must act, he said. He must be tested again, harder until he breaks. The next day, the challenge came not as a duel, but as an invitation. The human was called to the Hall of Trials, a place where warriors faced the impossible. The alien woman walked beside him, her voice low. They mean to break you, she said. The trials are not fair fights. They are traps designed to crush the spirit. The human nodded once. Then I will not break, he answered. Inside the hall the warriors gathered again. The elder sat high upon a stone throne, his glowing eyes fixed on the human. He spoke with authority, his words sharp as blades. You showed mercy in battle, but mercy is not enough. If you wish to stand as equal, you must survive our trials, not one, but 3. Gasps spread through the crowd, for no outsider had ever been given 3 trials. It was not a test, it was a sentence. Yet the human did not waver. I accept, he said, his voice carrying across the hall. The crowd roared with shock and hunger. The elder's smile was thin and cold. Then let the first trial begin at dawn, he declared. That night, as the fires burned low, the alien woman spoke to him again. You are either the bravest fool I have ever seen, or the most dangerous man I have ever met, she said. The human smiled faintly, though his eyes carried no arrogance. Maybe I am both, he replied. But I know this. Every trial is another chance, another step, another spark. And sparks can burn brighter than fire. The alien woman looked at him for a long time. Her people had always believed size was strength. Power was dominance, victory was blood. But here was a man who carried something else. Something she could not yet name. And as dawn approached, she realized she no longer wanted to see him fall. She wanted to see if he could rise. And so the human stood ready once more. The duel was behind him, the respect uncertain, the danger ahead greater than ever. But his spirit was steady, his heart unshaken, for he knew the story was not ending. It was only unfolding.